regular meeting of council to order. Recommendation that the agenda for the regular council meeting of May 14th, 2018 be adopted with revision of the order of tonight's presenters to switch the marina and the recruitment and retention reports, as well as items 6A and 6B to the agenda. Moved by Councillor Niche, second by Councillor Cunningham. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Item 3A, recommendation of the minutes of the special council meeting of April 23rd, 2018 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Randhawa, seconded by Councillor Moreau. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Item 3B, recommendation that the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of April 23rd, 2018 be received. Moved by Councillor Niche, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. And 3C, recommendation that the minutes of the regular council meeting of April 23rd, 2018 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Moreau, second by Councillor Randhawa. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, first up we have a report or delegation from our Calbe Marina, Mr. Robin Beatty, regarding the public kayak float. Welcome back.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Mr. Beatty, I apologize. Green button there on your mic. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for your time.
One more time. There you go.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for your time. I'm excited to be before you to discuss the city's another city asset dedicated to the city's value of shared public spaces and water access. I am Robin Beatty. I am the manager of the City of Prince Rupert's Calbe Marina. And if I might beg your indulgence and a little bit of patience, I'm going to show you a short video of drone footage of the marina and more specifically the breakwater and the float.
Are those people fishing off the dock?
Yes, they are fishing off the dock. In fact, they caught a fairly sizable flounder while they were fishing.
And I'm guessing this is the addition you're going to speak to tonight? You don't have to touch that mic at all. Yeah.
Yes, that's the kayak float at the end of the breakwater. I come before you to report the opening of the community's newest public space. In keeping with the City of Prince Rupert's goals of improving the public's access to waterfront and the enjoyment of our beautiful harbor, the Calbe Marina has added the kayak float, an easy and convenient space to launch private kayaks and canoes. It is an important value of the community that we are able to enjoy public or waterfront access. And it has been a challenge at times. However, with the leadership of Mayor and Council, we have been able to keep improving that access. The breakwater was part of the city's commitment to that access and has been received extremely well by the public. And now we have completed another important part of that commitment, where the breakwater focuses on the public's access to the picturesque viewing of the harbor. This newest edition focuses on the public having access to launch their kayaks and canoes. And the central location of the marina means everyone can take advantage and explore our beautiful harbor. After approving the capital budget to complete phase 3 of the marina project in September of 2016, staff embarked on confirming the continued funding from NDIT, which committed to 70% of the funding towards the expansion of the marina. The expansion enhances visitor capacity and commercial opportunities in the city of Prince Rupert and is extending economic benefits to the local economy by way of increasing the appeal of Prince Rupert as a tourist destination and a livable city. The Phase 3 expansion has a budget of $130,000, and we are glad to report that we have come in under budget. This week, we should see the the final installation of the access stairs and ramps, which will make the float fully ready for the public. It has been exciting to see the public already starting to use the float. Over the past few weeks, there have been several kayakers and canoers launching from the marina or making the marina a stop in their lunchtime breaks. Additionally, with the amazing beauty of Prince Rupert, there have been many people making the breakwater and the float an important part of their memories. I have been witness to dozens of groups, literally dozens over the past few weeks, using the kayak float for family and group photos. As well as giving young children the experience of putting their hands in the water. Children truly light up when they can touch and feel the world around them. While we expected the breakwater and the kayak float to improve the public's access to the water and waterfront, it is in the little details about being able to touch the water that I believe this newest asset is making a lasting memories for local families and the public. Thank you very much for your time.
Great, thank you for that report. Questions from council? Councillor Winhour?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for your presentation. Is this new addition open to anybody? Anybody? And the second question is like any kayak, do they need any insurance to go there, or marina's insurance will cover that?
So anytime someone else touches a mic, you put it, yeah.
So the kayak float is fully open to the public. They're welcome to use it. It's the same bylaw that manages the marina, and rules that, like insurance and coverage for the marina, applies to everyone. So ideally it's a 2-hour use, but it's not like I'm going to start kicking people off if they're taking a long break and they've got their kayaks tied up. As for liability and insurance, it is on the user themselves. It's just like a public space with a bicycle. So if they're on a sidewalk and they're parked it somewhere, it's basically the exact same coverage.
And how this year's forecast and how future looks for marina?
I don't have a lot of the specifics on that, but right now we have a lot of reservations. In fact, much of the month of July is getting pretty close to capacity on the reservation end of things. However, we do have basically both sides of the breakwater we don't make reservations on unless they're really large vessels that have no other space to go to. So day-to-day traffic should always have opportunities. But the marina is looking like it's going to do better than it did last year, is what I would say.
Great. Other questions? Councillor Cunningham.
Great addition. I like the idea of the kayaks. I notice you call it a kayak float. You say there's a 2-hour time limit on there?
Yeah, in general there's a 2-hour limit. Like I said, there's the rules are like, yes.
So I've noticed there's been 2 vessels on there for 2 weeks, 2 months. What's the deal with that then?
Those canoes are owned by a community group, the Prince Rupert Outrigger Society, and they've made arrangements in order to stay on the marina or to leave there because they give use of those canoes to the public through their society. I don't really manage it, so I don't know the specifics, but I have been on the canoe trips, and it's actually quite enjoyable. A friend and I went about a month and a half ago.
So no one can actually store their kayaks there overnight or all day or for a weekend?
At present, the marina is managed by the bylaw, and so there is no avenue for storing them. There's no safe place to store them. When people tie up, they'll need to take them to shore or to their vehicles.
So this thing's not open yet quite yet, is it? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It is being used, but I try to catch people as they're doing that because we haven't got the stairs and ramp in place, so there's a little bit of a gap that they have to cautiously step over, but it is being used. It's just people need to be very cautious. And so it will be, that ramp and stair will be in place ideally by the end of this week, barring complications, but I don't foresee any complications.
Okay.
There's no charge to use it then?
Yeah, that is correct. There's no charge for the use at all.
And the long term for the Catamaran Club, are they paying anything?
They're not paying me anything. No, they have an arrangement because they're providing a public service. It's sort of like the Dragon Boat Society, where they do a lot of stuff where they get the community involved in that sort of stuff. So they're basically part of the community's access to the waterfront.
Can the Dragon Boat Society store their vessels on that float?
No, they don't store their vessel on my float, on the marina, I should say.
Other questions? Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Cheers. Okay, next up, we have 3 members of the community who are here to report out on a recruitment and retention study. Welcome. Absolutely. Or you guys can lean over each other if you'd like to, but mostly people do that.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you for having us, Your Worship and Council. My name is Chris Armstrong. This is Karen Sawatsky, and to my left is Christy Farrell. We are all recent graduates of the Simon Fraser University MBA program that was up here, and we'd like to share some of the results of our final project with you. In short, we believe Prince Rupert is in the middle of a labor shortage. With the recent hiring of a large cohort of workers at the port and CN, and with the impending construction happening at Ridley Island, a number of workers in the service industry have bumped up into these companies for higher pay and better careers. We should emphasize here we're not unsupportive of those desires. However, what this has resulted in is an unemployment gap in the service sector. As you'll hear, we've seen firsthand the results of a worker shortage. You've also seen it on our streets. Over the last few months, a number of businesses have closed because they couldn't find workers or because the owners themselves went to better opportunities. The reason I was interested in conducting this project was simply my love for the community, and I believe that small business is an integral part of this community. And if we start losing the small business, we'll see community decay.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. My name is Christy Farrell. I am the owner of a few enterprises in town, a couple of restaurants and property developments. I've been in business in this area for the past 15 years, and I got involved in this project as a business owner. I have seen a radical change in the way I'm able to staff my businesses in the last 15 years, so much so it's at a crisis point in terms of being able to operate sustainably. And the reason I wanted to look at this was I know that there's a problem, but I wasn't sure what to do. I knew that what I was doing up to date has not helped and will not help me in the future. And I entered into this program to see what kind of solutions I could find for my business and also share that information to the community.
Hello, everyone. I'm Karen Sawatsky. I'm with the TD Canada Trust. I'm here as a member of the business community. I've been with the TD for the last 10 years, and this is my third branch. It's also my second time being in Prince Rupert, and I love the community. It's a great place to work. I've been with the local branch for about 4 years now, and over the years we've had ongoing challenges with recruitment and retention issues, and it's not getting any easier. So joining this program has allowed me to investigate these causes a little further, really identify what the root causes are, and work with my cohort to present some possible solutions.
When we look into this, we had to do an investigation of the statistics, which tell us where we've been and sort of the trends and where we're going. So first thing you always look at is your population stats. Recent stats 2016 for Prince Rupert, we're at 12,200 approximately, Port Edward 467. If we look on the whole of the province, there's a provincial increase of approximately 5.6% growth in population. Prince Rupert is experiencing a decline of negative 2.3. Consecutively, you have a negative 14.2% decrease in population for Port Ed. Approximately 68% of employment in the region here stems from the service-producing sector. Typically, that employs low to medium skilled workers. Currently, BC itself is looking at a growth in its economy, close to 1 million new job openings, and BC itself is looking for the North Coast is looking at about 10,200. A lot of these job openings are due to 1/3 of expansion and also 2/3 replacement of an aging workforce. We know in this area we're seeing hyper-economic growth, specifically due to port activity. We're looking at things around DP World, and we all know there's been like radical increases of job openings there. So we know that the economy is not only growing, but it's definitely on the rise for this region. We specifically here to talk about the low to medium skilled workforce. So what that means is the low skilled workers encompass people who work in personal services, food, retail, and security positions. Generally, low skilled workers implies high school graduation, and when they go to work, on-the-job training is provided. Low skilled worker does not equate to low pay necessarily. When you look at medium skilled workforce, they tend to require some formal education beyond high school up until a 4-year undergraduate program. So that could include certificates and diplomas. These jobs include administration, sales, production, operators, contractors, labor positions. If we look here on the left, we see that the demand in the labor force is approximately 64% required for low to medium skilled workers. 18% of this workforce would have their high school or occupational training. 42% will have a diploma or certificate or apprenticeship training, and 4% for high school level. So you'll see there's high demand for people with this type of background and experience. If you look on the right for the industry outlook, there's 5 main sectors that are needing workers, specifically retail, accommodation, food, transportation and warehouse, health, social assistance, and technical professions. What we see from these stats is that Prince Rupert and the region is highly reliant on the service sector, and we have to have this sector supported for this growing port economy.
Thank you, Christy. So this slide illustrates what the impact of prolonged vacancies can have on wages. There was a study released by the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses back in December, and they were forecasting over the next 12 months wage increases straight across the board for every industry, with hospitality taking the biggest jump, looking at a 4% increase in their wages just to attract workers. If we look at the next slide, we'll just dial with Prince Rupert. One major concern amongst workers is the high cost of housing. As everyone is aware, Canada has been in a housing bubble since the early 2000s, and Prince Rupert really hasn't been immune to that. If you look at the stats from 2013 and on, our housing costs have increased, housing prices have increased by about 7% every year, which is great for people if you want to sell your house and cash in on the equity, but it makes it very difficult to keep a roof over your head, especially if you're in a low to mid-skilled job. One example I pulled was for a front desk clerk worker working full-time here in Prince Rupert, making about $30,000 a year in wages. They're spending about 35% of their income on housing costs, and then another 45% on living expenses. So that's your food, utilities, transportation. After all of those bills are paid, there really isn't a lot left over to save or plan for the future. So what's happening is a lot of these service workers are taking second, third jobs to pay their bills. And when that doesn't work, they're leaving the service industry altogether and they're taking higher paying industrial work.
Okay, so I'll just briefly share some results of a survey we did. We surveyed approximately 60 businesses in Prince Rupert over the course of a few months. One of the main findings was that 75% of businesses are concerned with losing workers in the next 1 to 5 years. Then to drill down a little bit into that fact, we looked at what the biggest impacts of the business are when they're short-staffed, and by a pretty wide margin, it's burnout. The remaining staff getting burned out is obviously a major concern. What that does then, when the staff get burned out and they leave, the owner then becomes staff, and then they get burned out, so it turns into this vicious cycle. We also looked at the expected skills. By a pretty wide margin, the occupational skills unique to the primary business were the main skills that employers are looking for, as well as trades. Sales and service are down third on the list. And interestingly, and even by a wider margin, is the employers are looking for employees who can work across multiple subjects. So the job description they might have got hired for isn't quite what they're going to be doing as time goes on. They want to be able to put them into different roles in the organization.
So before we get into possible solutions, looking at the data, it's evident that we're in a different ballgame right now. And if small businesses are facing some pretty big challenges right now, if we don't do anything as a community, what small businesses are looking at is increased costs due to staff turnovers. They're looking at increased costs due to closure of their businesses. Without workers, they can't grow their businesses and provide more services. They can't follow through on existing service obligations. And if they're looking to possibly retire, it makes succession planning very difficult. If we can show they can't run the business very well, it makes it hard to be able to sell it.
Okay, so what our group, through our findings, what we have found is that specifically we are here to request an action task force on this topic. We are requesting a collaborative business and community approach. Specifically, we are respectfully asking the council to acknowledge that the labor shortage crisis is here and it is very specific to the service sector. We also would like to see council investigate how to reduce employee and resident turnover rates. We do suggest a focus, bringing more people to the community that's specific to the needs of low to medium skilled workers, that council is able to work with business in addressing the labor shortage opportunities. We took a look at your website and found that there could be a lot more resources available to employers and prospective employees or people moving to the city, ways to market the area as a great live-work destination. We understand that the Economic Development Officer is working with a regional task force to market the area, but again, we want council to hone in on not just the accountants and the engineers coming with spouses, but people who are going to fill the service sector employment positions as well. And we have submitted our research findings, so we do hope that council looks too. But one of the things that we've put together is an employee engagement and retention strategy plan. There's many strategies that other employers are doing that are working, but we don't find that this information is coordinated in a positive way for the whole community. We'd love to see this attached to your website in some way, or to have you send it out to other organizations. Yeah. We hope that you acknowledge that this is an issue and provide us with a little bit of feedback maybe on what council is doing to address the topic. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'll open up to council queries. Councillor Niche.
I think we're all aware that there is a shortage of people around here, especially with all these fairly lucrative port jobs coming, and you know, it's a tough hiring process down there because you know they hire almost through the union, so you can't draw from out of town a lot. It's tough to draw people from out of town. So I mean, I definitely support anything we can do to try and bring more people into the town, but it is tough to bring in people if they say a teacher comes and teaches. Well, maybe husband or wife wants to work at the port, but because of the process that they hire down there, it makes it hard to get a job there because you almost have to need to know someone. So we'll hopefully with what we've got already going on and some of the stuff that you've done, we can hopefully try and make a go at it and try and attract more people to come here, because we definitely need them. We lost a lot of people when the mill went down.
Councillor Rena.
Thanks for your presentation. I know mostly business people, they have problem retention. So like I was wondering, like, if we can bring for foreigner workers, is that can solve the problem too, you think? If we encourage foreigner workers in our community or something like that?
It most definitely can. I'm actually bringing in an immigration consultant in 2 weeks, and I'll be taking him around to other businesses to see what he's able to do for them. It is an option. It is controversial. But when we look at we just physically don't have the amount of people we need to fill these positions that are going vacant. So I think Prince Rupert is a very welcoming and multicultural city, and I think that is definitely one avenue that we can start looking at.
And how about if we can approach Northwest Community College or Hacker Strait to train our people so they can fill the gaps there? Is there another possibility be there?
Definitely, we are looking at different avenues for this presentation. We'd like to go to chamber, and that's another avenue for us to pursue, is going to the colleges.
Thanks for doing great job.
Councillor Morrow.
It's Joy Thorkelson here.
Oh, you go ahead, Joy. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, we just lost 600 jobs at the cannery 2 years ago, so I can hardly see that there's a real shortage of labor. They didn't all run away. And what I'm wondering is if really what the problem is that at minimum wage, people can't find a place to stay.
Well, I think that people do disperse to various opportunities. I could only speak for my own experiences with the business. I know that I personally have a lot of help wanted ads out constantly, and I'm extremely active in my recruiting processes. And there are people in town, sometimes like Karen was mentioning, they do have 2 or 3 jobs, and it might even be a matter of availability that sometimes businesses can't accommodate. Minimum wage is is going to be increasing in the next 2 years, starting at $15 an hour. Personally, for myself, that will not help me retain the employees that I am constantly losing to the port, who are working in excess of $40 to $50 per hour. It will help the people with me, but I personally, I don't see that is the direct issue. I think that we are honestly just needing more bodies in this community to take on work and also to start businesses. Mm-hmm. Did you want to mention?
I just have a follow-up to that. I'm wondering, we have one of the highest unemployment rates in British Columbia. We certainly have the highest rate of welfare and the highest or second highest rate of welfare and the highest or second highest rate of unemployment insurance. And I'm just I'm just wondering if you know, there are other issues that small business needs to deal with, and some of those are trying to work together to schedule people so that they can meet a schedule. And, you know, I know of quite a few of our ex-members who are working at 2 or 3 jobs and are having to quit some jobs because employers want them at the same time and don't want them at the same time. So, you know, if maybe employers can work together to make an attractive package for workers. I don't really see bringing in a bunch of new people from outside to work at minimum wage jobs when people are having a difficult time finding places to live at a 40-hour-a-week minimum wage job right now. Now, when it goes to $15 an hour, that may be different. I kind of think it'll still be a tight fit. So that's just a comment. And then my other question is, I mean, I really think that small businesses should work together to get a package deal for people so they can get 40 hours a week with hours that are not going to be conflicting with each other. And the other question is did you do any research on communities like Fort St. John and Dawson Creek, communities that had exactly the same, well, a similar problem, where high wages were being paid, rents were expensive, and minimum wage jobs were not being filled?
Yes, it's Christy Farrell speaking in. I actually did a lot of interviews with employers out of Fort Mac, which was quite interesting. Really what employers are trying to do now is get out of the old way of doing things and be very flexible and very versatile. And scheduling is pretty much number one. When you have quality candidates, you want to keep them, and you do bend over backwards to make sure you could fit them in wherever possible. Sometimes you have minimum hours, and certain hours need to be managed that the bulk of the people can't do. So scheduling everybody for 40 hours can be challenging. But a couple of the interesting things that they do in Fort Mac is it's really just changing the mindset now as an employer, as opposed to having somebody come to you and you thinking, well, what are they bringing to me? You now have to assess, well, what am I actually offering for this person? So I heard this a couple of times from employers in Fort Mac. They said it's not even necessarily the wage at times, it's more what are the training opportunities, a long time advancements that people have within the company, and really working with people more at an entry level to see how they could work and build their skill set. Did I answer your questions?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's an issue of every small community, and I am, and I know that people would like to get 40 hours a week, and I know that it's difficult for employers to schedule the 40 hours a week. But if employers and small businesses work together and had a pool of people, maybe that would work so that people could be on call. And I'm not suggesting that you have a labor-ready style employment service. but I think that, you know, a group of employers, 4 or 5 employers could get together and decide what they want to have in the way of employees, and then try to schedule them so they're not competing, but they're actually working together. So, you know, I think that what you found in Fort Mac, I think that's an important lesson, and I certainly, you know, don't want to see any more small businesses close downtown. But I think that, you know, there are certainly has to be ways around it. With our high unemployment rates, there have to be ways to be able to attract people who are going to end up working more than 25 hours a week and struggling on that because they can't make it on 25 hours a week at minimum wage.
Mm-hmm. That's all very good points. And throughout our research, we did identify a possible business opportunity to have an HR consultancy group local in Prince Rupert who would act as an HR consultancy to small businesses to help identify and address employee concerns regarding flexibility of working hours and provide career opportunities to these to people like that. We also looked at possibly a business having a recruitment aspect to that business, either filling temporary workers or possibly helping businesses find new workers to just ease their burden.
Okay, we'll pass it off to Councillor Moreau.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair, and thanks very much for your presentation tonight, guys, and kudos on finishing your program. I know it's no small feat to complete a master's through SFU, so congratulations. So from my perspective, I just want to make a couple of points. You guys had posed the question, you wanted to know where the city was at, and so I just wanted to switch hats for a second on something the Small Business Advisory Committee has been working on. I'm not sure if you saw, I believe it was last meeting, we had presented a list of recommendations from the committee, and one particular initiative, the recruitment and retention of skilled labor, was consistently identified as the #1 concern that small businesses have in Prince Rupert, and it's been consistently the top issue on a 2 or 3 to 1 margin for the last 2 or 3 years. So it's not a secret in Prince Rupert that this is an issue. So something that we've been working on is that list of recommendations. So there's a few different key pieces that I see moving forward. So first of all, I want you guys to be aware that the council is scheduled for a workshop with the advisory committee on May 29th. So that's something in the short term. Another thing in the short term, I think you guys may have seen it. It was quite recent, but the new princerupertecdev.org. It's basically a recruitment site that's supposed to give kind of industry knowledge for any potential employers or potential franchisees or anyone who's looking to start up a business. So I think that's another tool. I know it's quite recent and probably wasn't able to be analyzed by you guys on such short notice, but it's something else I think we'd really like your feedback on moving forward. I think the interesting piece that the committee hit on that I hope we'll find some consensus on council is this concept of collaboration. It's not as simple as just putting the onus on small business to be bending over backwards, because every business has their own unique needs, and if everyone's working within their own silo, everyone's going to be struggling with their own unique individual issues. So what we had talked about at the committee level was how to get the major employers in town, like such as DP World and all these industrial companies that are paying high wages. They're suffering from this labor shortage as well, because they can't find the qualified people that they need. And then small businesses, like you've mentioned, are struggling with the wage pressures and cost pressures of having to try to at least be somewhat competitive. So I think our goal on council, at least one of the recommendations that the committee's put forward, is how can the city bring together all of those major employers and some of those stakeholders, I think particularly of job skills training initiatives like Hecate Straight, and how can we get people who are struggling with unemployment or who are on EI with basic job skills training so that they can get into that initial service job and hopefully start to work their way up. And then moving forward from there, that's kind of the short term. I think a little bit longer term, what we're looking at is it's something that's going to need just some serious elbow grease, right? It's going to need a lot of these different agencies coming together, and I think the city has a key role to play in providing basic information, demographics, an atmosphere of welcome for new business. But even bigger than that is just making sure that we have our finger to the pulse of what's actually happening on the ground so we can make the best decisions possible. So with that said, I'm just left with one question that a stat that jumped out to me that I hadn't really particularly considered was you had said that the percentage of people not in the labor force in Prince Rupert was 32%. And to me, that rings as being quite high. So I'm wondering if you found provincially, is that about the percentage province-wide, or is that or is that an issue that's unique to Prince Rupert and having a lot of people not participating in the labor force?
Right, and that stat was people not of age yet or eligible, or people who, for whatever reason, simply they might be of age and technically capable of work, but just not working. So it could be the people within the EI and social assistance platform. I don't have the BC stats here. I pulled it all out, actually, just to focus on the Rupert. That is in our report in detail, but I can get back to you on that too.
Other comments? Councillor Cunningham and Councillor Niche.
Thank you very much for the presentation. When you say 32% not in the workforce, that's a third of the workforce that's not working. So I would think, rather than going outside the community, to find a way to make it more attractive for that workforce to get, or that part of the workforce to get involved. And, you've got some factors impacting retention and things like that in this report that you handed to us, and I don't know what is being used and what isn't being used. But it's pretty informative and pretty good. And if small business really wants to retain workers, people like a challenge sometimes. They like an objective at the end of the day or the end of the week. It's not always about money. It's about having pride in your job and things like that. And so if you can instill some of the things that you've got in here in this report into the workforce working for you, I could see you retaining people more so than people leaving. If it's a dead-end job, then people have got to find a way. Employers have to find a way to make that job a little more attractive. It's definitely a challenge for everyone. It's some people, like to be challenged more than others, and some people don't like to be challenged at all. And as a small employer, you don't have an HR department, so you're making those decisions yourself. But having that large percentage of people not in the workforce, it would be interesting how you could get them engaged in working and give them some incentives to work, or a future light at the end of the tunnel. It's not all about money with people nowadays. I find with younger people, it is when it comes time to pay the rent and that. But if you can engage people in finding ways to keep them there, and it's a challenge to them or something like that, I would think that you might be able to nibble away at that 32%, and it might be something to look at as well.
We absolutely agree with pretty much everything you just said there. And I think the retention aspect should be high on the list of any employer, really. I mean, it costs less to retain an employee than it would be to recruit an employee. Just some local stats that we pulled out in our report that you have in front of you. What recruits look for, or even anyone in a job, for the most part, 23% are looking for career development and progression, and 16% are the image of the employer itself. So obviously, yeah, there is an onus here on the management of, or the owner of the business, to make sure that their employees are progressing. But as you say, you're right. That there has to be something on the side of the employee as well that really wants to get that, fire in the belly to progress in his or her career. Yeah.
Councillor Niche.
I'm just going to touch a bit on more of the housing issue. I think we haven't really touched too much on the housing, and Councillor Thurkelson mentioned, it is expensive for rent, and we're so challenged in our housing in this town because we don't have developers, knocking on our door to build, because it is so. It's challenging to build here. It's expensive to get out of the ground because of our conditions, because whether it's muskeg or rock or whatever we have to deal with. I mean, you look at, for an example, the old King Ed School site and what Metlakatla is having to go through to just to come up with some solid ground to build on. And, you know, it's costing a lot of money. So, you know, if you could get cheaper housing, I think you could probably gain a lot more people too. Cheaper housing, you know, would probably solve a lot of the problem. But unfortunately, you know, the people that want to build this, they don't want to lose money when they want to build. So, you know, maybe we have to start looking at, you know, almost like camp sort of options, you know, for people that want to come from other areas where they can, you know, maybe find a place to even just get started and you know, stay for, or something where they can bring their family and stay and set up in some sort of, you know, camp style housing, because really, I mean, this is what I work in every day is building stuff, and I know what the challenges are, and you know, a lot of times you see these posts on, you know, people are angry because they see how much a landlord is charging. There's no doubt that sometimes there's landlords that are taking advantage of the situation or charging too much for, you know, for a property that, you know, probably shouldn't be charging that much. But there is also a lot of costs and challenges for landlords. I mean, this town it's expensive to maintain a house in this town. You know, just because of our weather, it's expensive for taxes. It's expensive for many reasons. So I really think that you know, housing is something that needs to be looked at. You know, as to solve this problem, because I do think that you can gain a lot more people to this town if you had a place for them to live, because you do see that a lot, people complaining about rent. I think that it's not any fault of anyone's other than, you know, we've lost a lot of housing. I mean, we've had apartments burned down, and now to replace those apartments has cost so much that they can't afford to do it, or their insurance is enough to cover to rebuild it. So we've lost hundreds of units, and you know, those were the units that were, you know, I wouldn't say low end, but they were, you know, they were older buildings, so they were cheaper to rent, and you know, that's where I think we would probably have to focus more, is on housing, because as much as you know, there is obviously issues everywhere, but I think housing would probably solve a good portion of it.
Councillor Cunningham, then, or did you want to follow up on that?
Sure. I just wanted to add that it's really about strategy for employers and employees. So that is why we put this resource package together, to really, again, pool to find out what current employers are doing with respects to housing. Just for myself, years ago, my husband and I have invested in houses to make sure that when we brought staff in, we had a place for them to stay, that we knew was a quality house, that we knew we had a long-term option for people, whether they want to stay in it or not. It's kind of what employers have to do now. You have to be involved in all aspects of somebody's life. You have to promote your community. You have to drive people around. You have to introduce them to their churches, to the schools, to their community groups. I just want to point out, back with what Joy had said, the employers in this town are really working very hard with as many resources as we can. We're just really looking to collaborate and connect a little bit more with each other, so that I could share my experiences, and most definitely I can find out from other people what they're doing. But housing is number one. Well, people will look online to see what the cost is before they decide to come here. So people need multiple options, from a shared room, furnished, non-furnished, everything. All of those options need to be available.
Councillor Cunningham, and then we'll start to wrap up.
Okay. Housing, Whistler had a real crunch for years. You know, yeah, people wanted to go up there to ski as well as to work, but a lot of people just went up there to work. And communities like them, Banff, Jasper, that get an influx of seasonal workers, and that might be areas to look at for models. I like your idea, Christy, of, you know, supplying your own sort of thing. It's something that if you get a group of employers together, you can look at something like that. And if one or two of you have a house or something that you can actually say, okay, we've got this place for X number of workers and things like that, that might help the problem. But like Councillor Neese says, housing is definitely, just for the people here now, it's a problem. Never mind for people coming in from the outside, and when they see and they think like, what's going on. But the other thing is promoting Prince Rupert. That's something council can do. And I've seen a promotion that Fort St. John has put out. It's awesome, and I just understand we've put out a video now about promoting Prince Rupert, and it's quite good, evidently. So those are things that if you get people excited to come to a place, then they will usually find a way to make things work. And if you've got employers that are working with them, it's a plus. It definitely is. And we all know it's a challenge. Like small businesses are closing for lots of different reasons. One is labor, one is online, and it goes on and on and on. But, I think that's where the city could have a role through the Small Business Committee. There was some fantastic ideas that came out of that. And I'm actually excited about our workshop because, I sat in on some of the meetings, and there was a real good interaction between the business community and the council, and I'm hoping that a lot comes out of it because it could really help everyone in the community along the way. And again, thank you for coming.
So I'll just finish up. What I'd love to see is your guys' work here be integrated with the regional recruitment and retention process, because that is a kind of our official response to this as a council. It's not just focusing on just the region. Each ECDEV officer of each of the communities, Terrace, Kitimat, Rupert, are all focusing on our own areas. This website that just came out is as a result of that, and it's now a kind of a supersized one-stop shop for anything to do with recruitment, retention, employee services, all those type of things. It's a separate site from the city's site. So that was just launched like last week. So I don't even think you guys probably even knew about that until you were done your report and done your program, right? So one of your recommendations was some arm of the city site. Well, now there's a whole new site completely dedicated to pretty much everything, a lot of the recommendations that you're saying here. So I'd love to see you guys connect with that crew of ECDEV officers. There's funding behind that and a bunch of resourcing behind that through the Real Dividend Fund. So there is money behind that to get this all going, and where a lot of the things you guys are saying here today, it literally is echoed pretty much in the Northwest. So I think you guys are totally tapping on what exactly is the issue, and now you're bringing this another layer forward, which is wonderful, I think. So in terms of our position, I think we're certainly 100% with you on the findings. We want to do something about it, and we are doing something about it. Councillor Moreau kind of touched on a lot of the things that are happening with that. But I think just in the immediate term, I'd love to see these findings be integrated with that and us come into one cohesive package together. And I think this has a lot of value in terms of providing those folks the resources and information that they need as well, because there's a lot of good stats and findings in here as well. So it's, rather than duplicating it, I think coming together. So if you're able to meet with Paul Vinatelli and have a good maybe, because a topic like this requires some conversation, right? And we could go actually probably a majority of the night here tonight talking further about this. So yeah, we'd love to continue to work with you guys more collaboratively on that. And for us, that would be through Paul Vinatelli, our ECDEV officer, who's leading the charge in terms of making sure that we can get these things. And it's not just industry focused. It's certainly service industry has come out as one of the top. Terrace, I know, has the same problem going on there. They've got people moving there, coming here type of thing, leaving service industries. So we all have to work together on that. So I think we're definitely there with you guys. And I think you put a ton of work and effort into this. So it's very impressive. And thank you for bringing it forward. And I'm looking forward to seeing it presented to the chamber as well, and you guys doing your rounds, because I know you probably have more to communicate through this. So we're certainly there with you. Well, thank you very much for your time tonight. We really appreciate everything you guys have done, and good work, and congrats on getting this out there. It's great. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have two reports from our Chief Financial Officer. First up, the 2017 audited financial statements.
Thank you. These financial statements consolidate the city-owned corporations in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Cash and cash equivalents on Statement A decreased by 4.3 million compared to the prior year, primarily due to the acquisition of capital assets. General receivables increased approximately 1.8 million, given a provincial grant receivable for Phase 1 of the water project being recorded. Conversely, the terms for Phase 2 of the water project enabled the province to advance funds prior to the project starting, which has caused an increase in deferred revenue of 1.4 million. Debenture debt has decreased in accordance with the repayment terms. The balance owing on the cruise ship dock is 1.5 million due in year 2025, and the airport upgrade balance owing is 6.2 million due in year 2034. Tangible capital assets saw an increase due to new infrastructure, Phase 1 of the water project being the most significant, with other assets such as the paving of 3rd Avenue and 2nd Avenue Bridge, the installation of Mariners Park Playground, and the acquisition of the fire department's pumper truck. Statement C identifies the operations of the various funds. The operating surplus experienced is mainly due to professional fees being less than budgeted, as well as the receipt of unbudgeted penalties and interest. The utilities funds ended the year with a surplus due to expenses being less than anticipated. The surpluses in each of these funds will contribute towards ongoing water projects, the future liquid waste treatment project, and the future landfill expansion. Schedule 8 is the format presented to Council throughout the year to establish variances to the approved budget. The most significant variance is in fiscal revenues, which includes dividends from legacy not allocated to capital projects. In the expenditures, some capital projects were either not completed or not undertaken and rather rolled over to 2018. Projects such as the hot tub repairs, Roosevelt Park drainage, other paving planned in the city, and the cell block professional plans. All of the above resulted in a surplus on Schedule 8. As in the past, we have provided the audited financial statements for legacy. The company's working capital is good, meaning there is sufficient cash to discharge immediate liabilities. Cash changed by approximately 3 million, in large part because of the dividend paid to the shareholder for approved 2016 projects. Current liabilities are up by 3.2 million on account of the dividend payable to the shareholder for the 2017 approved projects, the most significant being Phase 1 of the city's water project. The company saw net income of nearly 800,000 as a result of payments for exclusivity and occupation of legacy-owned and leased lands. And that's the summarization of my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Comments from Council? Councilor Moreau.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I just want to say, I'm really impressed by the quality of the audited statements, given the significant and unique revenue challenges and cost pressures that the city's facing. So I commend you and your staff for the quality of the statements. My one question has to do with the statement of operations, which is page 16 of your report and page 3 of the actual statements. The revenue over expenditure, the budget projection was 6.3 million, and we ended up at 11.5. So to my math, we basically came in ahead of schedule or ahead of projection by about 5.2 million. And when I look up, I think a significant portion of that is obviously due to the fact that we didn't receive some water grants, so obviously didn't incur those major expenditures. I'm just wondering if you can comment on kind of what makes up that difference and how we came in so far ahead of schedule.
So Statement B is a consolidation of all the city's operations, so the 2 corporations that the city owns, as well as the city's funds, all 4 of them being the general and then the 3 utility funds. When these are all consolidated together, basically there are some items that we didn't budget for, such as City West and legacy income, and some of our expenses like roads and legal and service costs came in lower than anticipated. Those are split out separately in Schedule C, Statement C. This all contributed towards the consolidated excess of revenue over expenditures.
Very good. Okay. Other Councillor Cunningham.
Again, amazing job. My question is on the Statement C, operating funds and surplus allocation. The water fund, the sewer fund, and the solid waste fund all had a surplus this year. And now that fund I always understood was self-funding. So if it has a surplus, Does that mean now it's going to go into capital projects?
Yes, so as mentioned in the report, the expenses came in less than we had anticipated, but the surplus that gets accumulated into the surpluses from previous years will all be utilized towards future projects that City will have to undertake, such as the liquid waste management plan, the water projects, specifically next is phase 2, and then hopefully phase 3 going forward, and of course the new landfill cell that we need to fund as well.
Other comments from council? Okay, recommendation that council by resolution accept the 2017 audited financial statements. Moved by Council Moreau, seconded by Council Randhawa. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Next, report from the Chief Financial Officer regarding the March 2018 financial variance report. Did you have any further comments here?
Well, now that the budget has been approved, we have something that we can measure against. We have measured up until the end of March. It's too soon for the rest of the expenses to come in from April. So as at March, the operating and utility revenues and expenses are on track for this time of year, and we are within budget. Capital projects are just beginning at this time, and that is basically the report.
Great. Recommendation that council receives this report for information purposes. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Niche. Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Next, we have a letter from the Child Find BC dated April 20th, 2018 regarding a proclamation request. The recommendation is that council proclaim May 2018 as National Missing Children's Month. Are you moving? Yeah. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Niche. Comments? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Next, we have a letter from Nathan Cullen, our MP for Skeena Bulkley Valley, regarding the passenger transportation, and the recommendations of council direct staff to provide a letter of support for their call to bring forward this matter before the federal government. Moved by Councillor Randhawa, seconded by Councillor Moreau. Any further discussion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to add in the letter, so as a VRL, they should talk about the VRL with the minister too. Guarantee of VRL, because Greyhound is already shutting down. So VRL right now is very unpredictable. Even from Port Ed to Prince Rupert sometimes takes hours. So I think they should give some guarantee for that, like give them priority, because some senior people on the train with small kids, moms, it's very hard for the people sometimes from it's like 10 hours late here. People sit on the train very uncomfortable, especially when we have tourist season starting now. So I think we should add VRL to talk to ministers, so give them some kind of priority so they can be on schedule. So
thank you. Councillor Moreau?
I just have a question of clarification, and maybe you would have the information here. But the new Friendship House service that's been set up along Highway 16, is that federally funded as well?
I believe there is funding. I believe that they receive some federal funding, but they're also running it as a social enterprise. So I think the intention is that they're running it as a kind of a service for a few years, and then they're hoping to be able to switch it as a user fee model, not a subsidized federal model. So from my understanding that there is some federal dollars into that program. But I also do know that the provincial government's also trying to work on a solution right now. There was a conference call with all the mayors in the north a week and a half ago, and it was mentioned that there's some sort of progress being made on some sort of transportation along Highway 16. So I believe they'll be making some more progress on that here shortly. I think specifically on this one is just to get the feds involved with this issue. But yeah, from the Friendship side of things, I believe that there's some funding from the feds, but I don't think it's long term. Yep.
Yeah, I think we have to be careful on this. Yeah, I really think that we need to pressure the federal and provincial governments. I was quite surprised they allowed Greyhound to shut its service down. And we need to pressure them because it's no good people going from one shuttle bus to another shuttle bus to another shuttle bus to another shuttle bus all the way across the Northwest. What we need is we need some kind of subsidized bus service that goes from Prince Rupert to Prince George to Edmonton, and Prince George to Vancouver. Particularly Prince George to Vancouver needs to be able to connect with the Greyhound operation from Prince George to Vancouver. It is the main way when people don't have much money to get down to Vancouver, and thank goodness we still have the train. We have VIA, but it's difficult to get a reservation on there in the summer. I think that was pointed out here. So, but I think that when the mayors did talk, I hope they talked about one smooth transition, not a bunch of bumpy shuttle buses.
Yeah, I just unfortunately can't speak more to what the conversation entailed was all. So it'll be up to the province to communicate what their plan is. However, there is one moving forward.
Oh, good. Okay. Hope it's more than a bunch of shuttle buses that you have to drag your stuff on, drag your stuff off.
I can say that it's been confirmed that we all agree that we have sorted out the kind of short-term links, these interspersed community connections between our communities. However, the conversation certainly is a consistent, continuous transportation along the north, for sure. Councillor Cunningham?
Okay, getting back to Councillor Rendawa's comment about VIA, it's getting worse all the time. You know, like it's supposed to be in at 8:30 tonight, and it's going to be in around 10:30, 11 o'clock. It makes it difficult for people coming into town to find accommodation and things like that. And you know, our basketball team got stuck on it for I don't know how many hours, things like that. And it just seems to be something that VIA just shoves off to one side and doesn't worry about. I don't know how much of an impact even a letter to VIA or CN is going to do, but the fact that we're pointing out that this is a problem to our community is something that we should address. Now, the other side of the discussion about the bus service, when we opted not to go into that bus service and Transition House and First Nations came together, and I thought Transition House would supply tickets to people to get to where they were going via Greyhound. Well, now that option's off the table totally. And so from Prince Rupert to Terrace now, where the other shuttle bus starts, is you have the Friendship House going, what, twice a week?
The Friendship House quite literally mimics the shuttle service that we would have opted into. So one of the reasons why we didn't go there is because we didn't want to duplicate service for that. The Transition House service was a separate service. That's a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week solution, which was to have a call number or text number where anyone, day or night, could call or text the Transition House and get a pickup. Usually, if it's 1 in the morning, they get picked up on the highway, brought back to the Transition House, and then the next morning or the day later or something, they would either be trained out, bussed out, or flown out to the location that they needed to go to, most likely through Greyhound. Now, that was before Greyhound made this decision. So now we are all in the same boat, regardless of having a continuous link. So at this point, the main options are ferry or rail, and June 1st is the deadline. So that was the intention of that. So in terms of, like I said, the inter-community links, everyone's got one now. Now we need to figure out as a team here what the longer game is going to be in terms of continuous service, which is technically a provincial responsibility. Councillor Niche?
You know, I look at all the money that's spent on transportation in the in the Lower Mainland, where they look at it as connecting communities, say through SkyTrain or whatever, and they'll spend billions of dollars doing that, but we're in the same boat. I mean, whether it's Prince Rupert to Terrace or Terrace to Kitimat or I mean, those should be thought of as the same, the same services. I mean, to connect these towns together. I mean, I think we need to remind them in our letter that you know, it's not all about the Lower Mainland, and it is about us too. And you know, just because there's an hour and a half between us and Terrace, I mean, there's, what is it, an hour and a half between Vancouver and Abbotsford, but yet they're connected through you know, services, all different transit services, and I think we should be connected through transit services in a sense too, and not transit services that you know, are put on our backs to pay for. I mean, they put all this money into transit services down there, then, you know, they should be doing the same for us up here.
So I think the intention here with this letter is that, although I think Nathan Cullen certainly acknowledges this is a provincial issue, that he personally, I think, would like to bring the federal government in on this issue, particularly due to the fact that the Highway 16's infamousy with highways of tears. So I think he would like to bring it forward there. So I think what he's looking for is communities along the line to pass these resolutions. If it's okay with the mover and the seconder, that a friendly amendment to include VIA as one of our focuses in that letter.
Priority service for VIA Rail and guarantee schedule for that.
So then we're essentially giving Nathan Cullen a mandate to not only engage, because he's also the BC rep for his party at the moment, so that connects with the province, but also to connect the federal government. So I think that's just trying to add another layer of support here for this multi-tiered issue, basically. Any further comments?
So anyone now that can still, that 24/7 phone call line is still open to Transition House.
That's correct.
So there's still that option.
Absolutely.
Rather than hitchhiking.
Exactly, and the truth is, who knows what the circumstances are, but the good news about that still being in place regardless of this is that no matter what, someone's going to be able to get picked up at any time of day or night and find a safe place to be, rather than having to hitchhike. So that's still in place. So us as a council, we essentially are supporting two streams. One's the Transition House stream, which is the 24/7 solution, and the other is us supporting the Friendship House with their service, which is the 2 buses a week, which is the same schedule it would have been with the inter-community link. Now the next step is all of us working together on a continuous line, and I think the province will have more to say about that within the next few weeks.
So should we be sending a letter to the province to?
I believe, yeah, we've already all said what we said to the province. The province has a working task group of all the mayors along the line that they're continually engaging us on. So we're all on calls with the province on a regular basis about this issue. The province certainly is not letting up the gas on this, because they know there is a challenge here that we're all facing, and there is a timeline, a deadline, and I think that you'll be hearing more from them about that. But this is now just trying to bring the feds in on that. Okay. All right, so all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, Mr. Mandrick. Mr. Vera.
It was my birthday. I'm younger.
Could you read out our resolutions from closed meeting, please?
It would be my honor. On April 23rd, 2018, at Council's closed meeting, the following resolution in regard to board appointments for the Prince Rupert Airport Authority was made, moved by Councillor Randhawa and seconded by Councillor Cunningham, that Council, having reviewed the applications for the Prince Rupert Airport Authority Board, make the 3 appointments, each for a 2-year term consisting of Miss Gloria Rendell, Mr. Kelly Sawchuk, and Mr. Knut Bjorndal. And that was carried. On April 23rd, 2018, at Council's closed meeting, the following resolution in regard to the board appointments for the Prince Rupert Small Business Advisory Council was made. Moved by Mayor and seconded by Councillor Niche, that Council, having reviewed the applications for the Prince Rupert Small Business Advisory Council, make the 1 appointment of Miss Rosa Miller for a 2-year term. That was carried. On April 23rd, 2018, at Council's closed meeting, the following resolution in regard to board appointments for the Prince Rupert Recreation Commission board appointments, moved by Mayor and seconded by Councillor Moreau, that council, having reviewed the applications for the Prince Rupert Recreation Commission, makes 6 appointments of Miss Joyce Sundin, Miss Sherry Pringle, Mr. Bruce Watkinson, Mr. Ralph Wick, Miss Joyce Charlton, and Miss Anna Marie Prohaska, and further appoint Councillor Niche and the chair of the Recreation Commission. And that was carried.
Thank you very much. Okay, reports from council. Councillor Cunningham.
Couple of things. First, I noticed that residents on Overlook want to start a community garden. And what's our policy on that?
Well, I don't think we have any policies developed for that. I think what it is about the circumstances around lots and that type of thing. And my understanding is, after talking with the organizers, that they're working with our operations department on a process. And I think it's a great idea. I think it's just following a similar process like McKay followed type of thing. So, because it's run by the same group. So we don't technically have a policy, which is something we're exploring with the 2030 Sustainable City policies on what community gardens and things like that would look like. So right now it's more as they come basis. And I know Richard Pucci, our Director of Operations, is engaged with the group on finding a way forward.
Yeah, no, it's something I'd totally support and think we should go ahead with, because it brings community members together. It's taking some empty lots that are full of whatever, cleaning them up, and it's enhancing the city and the quality of life in different areas of the city. And I think it's a great idea, and I think council should support it anyway. A couple of other questions is, at your H2O presentation, you talked about a strategy for cleaning up the city and that. And it was just a brief touch on it, and people have asked me what the strategy actually is and if it's going to be implemented this year or...
Right. HAZE 2.0, H2O, I think that stands for water is all. I'll say this.
That's appropriate for Rupert
yeah.
water.
No, so there's a couple things there. So first, as we've had conversations on council about derelict properties and things like that, so council or the staff is coming up with a 5-year plan essentially on a community cleanup process, which they're working on at the moment. So we're talking about vehicles, talking about derelict properties, ways we want to go about basically going through a cleanup, costs associated. So that's a report that's being generated at the moment. So that's the first thing. So the plan, I wouldn't say has been fully solidified. However, it's definitely going to be more likely a 5-year plan than trying to do it all in 1 year, just phasing in budgetary items type of thing. The other thing is that we talked about is I mentioned that we as council went on a bus tour and looked at different lots, and council is also looking at 2 different lots on each side of the town for trailer and boat storage opportunities for residents on city-owned properties, and so those are also being partly looked at as part of this issue, because there's lots of trailers and boats on the roads and things like that. We need to have an opportunity for these people to go places. So I think that's coupled with it. So all of this stuff's being analyzed at the moment. Then it's all going to be plugged into our GIS system, which is our new digital mapping system, so that it's all in one location, that we're able to access it digitally. So that's kind of a new innovation around that. So I'm expecting that this report may come out as soon as it's prepared. I'm not sure exactly when that's going to be, but within this year for sure. And yeah, that's kind of where it's at, I think.
So in the meantime, nothing's going to be done? Like,
I
are
wouldn't
we
say
going to
nothing's
have
gonna be done.
a spring cleanup or something like that? So,
I wouldn't say that's the case. People are cleaning up all over town. There's different community groups doing different things. It's just on what the city is going to do and how we're going to pay for it is what the issue is, right? So if we just say, okay, we're going to start taking out cars, well, what's the cost of that? Well, we know already it's definitely going to be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to clean up this town. So do we have the budget to do that right off the bat? Most likely not. So we need to figure out a phased approach to what are the top priorities, when are those going to be done, what's the plan for that. I'm hoping to be doing some action this year, and I think it's just moving within the capacity of the staff and the capacity within the organization to do something. So I wouldn't rule it out. I just can't answer that whether or not we are going to be moving immediately or not. That's all.
okay, at last council meeting, I asked about a derelict house that was on India, and staff was going to look into it.
I'll have to follow up on where that is. Sorry, there's a few people that are away right now.
Okay? Okay. Other reports? Councillor Randhawa.
Yeah, can you update on McKay Street Park? Like, why is still fenced? Like, lots of people ask.
Sure.
So can you update, please?
Yeah, my understanding is that the foundation of the park needs to do a little bit of work. They're grading there. There was a whole bunch of fill done, which has left the embankments on the sides kind of at a high level. It needs to be evened out so that it's safe to play. And there's inspections that are being done on the park and things like that. Because it was a volunteer effort, right? We got to make sure that everything is up to code and all that. But I do know that there's one section of the park that is just essentially elevated above the rest. And if you go down there, you'll notice that's kind of on an embankment. So that needs to be kind of smoothed out to make sure it's all even so that it's all safe. And so just a bit of a process with that, but I hope to have that open up soon. Other reports from council? Okay, entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Randhawa, seconded by Councillor Morrow. All those in favor? Meeting's adjourned.